everyone, and welcome to today's episode. We're going to be talking about Harbour Point by Irene Hannon. So, this one is a contemporary romance and it fits within the Christian fiction category, and it's book 12 in Irene's Hope Harbour series. So, why did I want to read this one? Well, I've been enjoying books from Irene for a very long time, and this is her 70th novel, which is just an amazing achievement. And I've loved reading books in her Hope Harbour series, including Sandcastle Inn and Sunrise Reef. And you can find recommendations for those books at my blog, at my website at narelleatkins.com. And I've also recorded episode 36 on Sunrise Reef. And also, Irene writes romantic suspense, and I've recorded episode 47 on Into the Fire. And you can look up those episodes at your favourite podcasting app or at YouTube in the playlists. And so I'll add my usual disclaimer and say many thanks to the publisher who provided an advance reader copy. And all the opinions that I express in this episode are completely my own. So let's talk about the book. Harbour Point by Irene Hannon is set in a small Oregon town. So we're on the Oregon coast and we're in the region that's very close to Coos Bay. And so this one has a number of romance and also women's fiction tropes because we have a subplot. We have insta-love, and before you cringe and say I don't like insta-love, let me assure you this insta-love is very logical and makes sense and isn't cringy at all. We also have a single dad hero with an adorable 9-year-old daughter. Our characters are very opposite and very different. So it's very much an opposites attract situation. They come from different worlds. So even though our leading lady was originally raised in Hope Harbour, when she was 12, she ended up in San Francisco and New York. So very different places. It's very much she's a sophisticated city girl and he's from a small town. And we have fish out of water story elements in this one. We have family drama. We have sibling rivalry between sisters that needs to get sorted. And our women's fiction subplot is a marriage in trouble as well. And there's a lot of family drama that goes with that. So the first line in the book from chapter 1 is this one. Her sister was in a coma. So as I said, that's a bit of a banger of a first line, and it definitely puts us right into the story and has us wondering what's going on. So this introduces us to Devon. So she's 33 years old and she lives in New York City, and she's currently a principal dancer and a ballerina. So she is very well known in the ballet world, at the top of her game and very successful. And so at the start of the story, she rushes back to Hope Harbour because she's listed as her sister's next of kin, and she discovers her sister's been in an accident and is in a coma in the hospital. So that's where we start. So Devon's her sister has been married, but we don't know what's going on with her husband. He's missing in action at the beginning of the story. And Devon has effectively been estranged from her sister for years, and she hasn't actually seen her for 13 years since they were both at their father's funeral. And her sister, who's stayed in Oregon, that's her older sister, has basically rejected all of Devon's attempts to reconnect with her and build any kind of relationship. So Devon has really felt like she's on her own in New York, and she has this wonderful career, but her family relationships are strained, and she has a strained relationship with her mother as well. So when Devon was 12, her mother packed the pair of them up, and they went to San Francisco and then eventually New York to pursue Devon's ballerina career because she showed talent when she was younger, which of course came to fruition as the years went by. And since that time, her father has passed away. Her mum has remarried and moved to Paris, where she lives with her husband and really has very little regard or interaction to her adult daughters as well, which comes out in the story. So I'm going to introduce you to our hero. So his name is Aaron, and he's 36 years old, and he works at the mill in town where he's a supervisor, and he's also a widower with a 9-year-old daughter. So at the start of the story, he's still dealing with grief and loss after having lost his wife in an accident, and that was all very complicated because his marriage was very difficult before she passed. So there's a lot of emotional baggage that goes with that. And his paternal grandfather also lives with them. His paternal grandfather did live with Aaron's father, but then Aaron's father recently passed away, so his grandfather moved in with him and his daughter. And so I'm going to move on to the meet cute because it's a meet cute that isn't a meet cute in terms of being something happening at the beginning of the story. It's more like strangers noticing each other in the distance. And so this is where the insta love comes in because there is an attraction and they are drawn to each other, but they're strangers who are kind of drawn to each other and curious about each other. And they both acknowledge there's some kind of zing going on before they officially meet. So it's a really interesting introduction to their relationship because they're not officially meeting until further into the story. So the subplot in this one, as I mentioned, is a marriage in trouble that includes family drama. And in this story, we have a lot of focus on healing broken relationships. It's a very big theme in the book. We have five point of view characters, which includes our leading lady's sister. We go into her point of view at different times as well. And so the romance between Devon and Aaron is very low key at the beginning. And so you might start reading this book thinking, am I really reading a romance? Is this just a contemporary fiction, women's fiction novel? But trust me, there's definitely a romance. It just doesn't kick off straight away. So keep reading and you'll discover the lovely romance in the story. And we also have an amateur musical theatre production of Oklahoma, which is a fundraiser, and that's held in the church hall. And it's this production that really connects and draws all the characters together as well, including our hero and heroine in the story. So we have many problems in this book, and that relates to all of the characters that have a point of view and some characters connected to them as well. So we've got the romance between Devon and Aaron, where they're in different worlds, living on opposite sides of the country. She's only in Hope Harbour to help her sister for a very short period of time. So, how could there possibly be a future? So, we have all of that going on. Everyone has emotional baggage of some description, and many characters are dealing with grief and loss as well. So, Aaron, of course, is dealing with the grief and loss of his wife, also his dad, and the complications that go from unpacking the emotional baggage from having had a difficult marriage for a whole bunch of reasons. And at the same time, his daughter is grieving. So he's also got to assist his daughter in terms of dealing with what's happened as well and prioritize her. And then we've got Devon and her sister who have a very dysfunctional family of origin. And so they both have a lot of childhood emotional baggage to unpack during the story. Devon's sister also has the baggage to unpack from her marriage. And there's also sibling rivalry that's a major theme that comes out in the story. And there's jealousy and misunderstandings. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes with the sibling rivalry, which was really interesting to read. And then with our subplot, with our characters with the marriage in trouble, we've got broken family relationships there that need healing and restoration. And as I said, grief and loss is something that a lot of characters in this story are dealing with. So I absolutely loved the story. It was so good. I really enjoyed it. The romance was low key at the start, but I loved how it all played out and where we ended up at the end. It was just lovely. And Devon was not a prima donna by any stretch of the imagination. She was very much a down to earth ballerina who really was willing to drop everything and go back to Hope Harbour, even though her relationship with her sister was not in the best place when she made that decision to drop everything and go home. And then Aaron, he was just such a lovely hero. He was hardworking, single dad, prioritizing his family. I just loved him and the way his character played out in the story and what happened with him. And I love the women's fiction story elements with the subplot and the marriage in trouble and the family drama that's happening with various characters in the book. And going back to the Hope Harbour story world, it's just delightful. I just love this story world and cast of characters. And these books can be read in any order. You don't need to start at book one and work your way through. And there will be mentions of characters in previous books, but not in a way that spoils their stories. So you can jump around in how you read all of these romances as standalones as well. And the small town charm, it just, Hope Harbour has it in spades. It's just wonderful. And the quirky cast of characters, and you get to see them again. And there's some anchor characters in the series that I just love. And the Oklahoma musical that really drew all of the characters together was just so fun. And I loved how that played out with our leading lady, who's our ballerina. Of course, Devon was the choreographer of all the dancing in the musical. So, this one I would describe as having relevant faith elements. And so the church communities are involved because we have Oklahoma happening in a church hall. We also have strong forgiveness themes that get brought up in the story in multiple situations of multiple characters. We have redemption, we have trust issues, and we also have grief and loss that our characters are dealing with in different ways. Now, usually I have one favorite book quote, and sometimes I might have two, but this time I have three favorite book quotes because I just couldn't make a decision. I thought, I've got time, I can talk about all of them, why not? So, my first favorite book quote is this one: Grief works differently for everyone. So, this is Aaron, and he's in conversation with his grandfather, talking about what's happening in their family in terms of dealing with grief, which was a big theme in the story. And then our next two book quotes that I have for you relate to healing broken relationships. So I'm just going to read through them as well. So this is the second one. We all make mistakes, and you know what they say about holding a grudge. It's like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. I don't want to spend my life being bitter. So this is from the subplot, and this is one of our characters involved in the subplot who's talking. And then the next quote that I liked is this one: People who want to change can change. And that is so true. And I think sometimes people can try and tell you they can't change, but if someone really wants to change and really wants to make a difference and really wants to heal and restore a relationship, then they can take actions to show the other people in their lives that they're serious and they actually want to make this change happen. And it's not just lip service. So, in terms of the impact on me with this story, there were lots of smiles. As I said, I love going back to Hope Harbour, and it was just so fun to hang out with this quirky cast of characters and to journey with them in the story. And at the same time, there were some very poignant moments. Obviously, with grief and loss, you have that when that's brought up. And in terms of looking at whether you can heal and restore broken relationships, there were some poignant moments there as well. And also, of course, the marriage in trouble. And I think what I really liked is how it was such a realistic portrayal of marriages in trouble, because at the end of the day, healing and restoration is not always possible. And it's unrealistic to tie everything with a nice bow and have everyone living happily ever after, because that's not what happens in the real world. And it doesn't actually make sense depending on the people who are involved as well. And that brings me to one of the themes that I was really thinking about with this book, which is healing broken relationships, because broken relationships are just so complicated. And everyone that's involved needs to be telling the truth and needs to be honest, not just with themselves, but honest with God and honest with the other people in the situation. Because if you don't have honesty and everyone on the same page telling the truth, then you actually can't get any healing as a in terms of restoring the relationships. The individuals can get healing, but you can't restore a broken relationship unless everyone involved is telling the truth and being honest, etc. So that willingness to humble yourself and to admit mistakes and to admit that you're not perfect and that you mess up, and to humble yourself in terms of talking to other people and saying that, and taking responsibility for things that you've done as well, and not taking responsibility for things that aren't your fault. So having those healthy boundaries are important. And how, when you're restoring relationships and looking at healing, addressing past hurts can't be ignored. When things that are really horrible and painful have happened in the past, you can't whitewash it and brush it over and pretend it never happened and smile. That's not how it works. And I loved how Irene, with the way the characters played out, really got into the whole idea that words are cheap, and that it's all very well to say you love someone, but you need to actually show in terms of how you live that you do love that person. And so it's a fruit that you need to see to, so you know the other person has actually changed. They're genuinely repentant. They genuinely want to make the relationship work, and how important it is that you have that genuine engagement in terms of trying to heal a broken relationship, and how the importance of truth and honesty in healthy relationships can never be underestimated. It's just a foundational essential that must be there. And if you don't have that truth and honesty, you've got really shallow and miserable fake relationships. And that's not what God wants for us. And I really love how the faith elements They were, I call them relevant because I wouldn't say they were strong on the page per se, but those faith elements really underpin the story in terms of how God's desire for us is to have healthy relationships. He wants us to have healing and to restore relationships, but there's a way that that needs to happen. And I loved how Irene really, through the way she's written this story, has drawn all of that out as well and those spiritual truths. And Devon's mother, it was really interesting. She is actually not in the story, but the family of origin and the things that happened in the past, particularly related to their mother, it really set up some very dysfunctional dynamics within the rest of the family. And what I loved about this book is how the adult daughters, they can choose a different path. They can actually choose to have a healthy relationship with each other and not be dictated by the childhood dynamics that were set up by parents, if that makes sense as well. So there was a lot I had to think about with this book, which is why I loved it. So, in summary, I would recommend this book to readers who like the insta love trope with opposites attract in different worlds and a single dad hero, to readers who like family drama and marriages in trouble as a subplot, and also sibling rivalry addressed in the story with sisters, to readers who like reading about ballerinas and musical theatre and fun things like that, to readers who love those contemporary romances that ooze small town charm with quirky and lovable characters that you would just love to know in real life because they're so fun. And I also recommend this book to readers who like relevant faith elements that include redemption and forgiveness themes. Thanks for joining me today. Does Harbour Point sound like a book that you'd like to read? Have you read it? What did you think? You can let me know. If you're listening at the podcast, you can send a text via a link at the show notes. If you're watching at YouTube, you can like the episode at YouTube and or leave a comment at YouTube. You can also email me at my website where I have a contact form, and you'll find that at narelleatkins.com. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, and you can do that at your favourite podcasting app or at YouTube, and then you'll get a notification and won't miss an episode. And also, if you've enjoyed this episode, please share the link with a friend, especially a friend who likes reading contemporary romance and a friend who you think would enjoy reading Irene's books. So thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.